So let me get this right. You're on the side that this is an absurd lawsuit.
Well, I don't know if I quite go to absurd or outrage, but
Outrage. Yeah.
but kind of BSy. I mean, like, seriously, first of all, do you have like a God-given right to a latte
Yeah.
to start with? I mean, maybe you can't have lattes.
God-given right.
Well, or is it in the
It was
Constitution?
the top 10 testament. It was number 3.
Life, liberty, and lattes.
Exactly,
I mean, is that what it
Pursuit
comes
of
down
happiness.
to? Yes. Well, happiness can be dependent.
Prioritizing profits. Prioritizing
Dangerous drug and product cases.
Welcome back. Another week, another episode of Prioritizing Profits, Dangerous Drug and Product Cases. I don't think we had too much going on this last week. I mean, it seemed pretty chill. We talked about the crazy viral jumping over the judge last week. I was hoping to see some feedback there. I think we just posted today, so we got to wait a little bit longer.
Okay, yeah.
But that was something that definitely blew up. How was your weekend? How was your week?
Pretty quiet weekend and week, actually. Not a whole lot going on here. Have some things. February is a very full month, so we're kind of,
Getting ready for that.
chilling and vibing for January and taking it easy. Yeah, I mean, some kind of crazy weather for here. Mm-hmm. I mean, rain, and for most people, this is like no big deal. But cold and rainy is not my thing.
I love it. I personally love it. Yeah, I'm pretty much on the same boat. I guess mostly been hanging out. I guess I did have a epiphany, in a realization, I would say, is that, I would say generally I'm a pretty happy guy. Like, I'm pretty content with where I'm at. Always trying to push forward, obviously, right? Improve in any way you can. But I think I get lost sometimes in like my priorities and being able to set time aside for things. And one thing that has been constantly neglected has been going to the gym. Going to the gym as well as drinking. I know that.
Wait a minute.
Well,
so
maybe a better way, sobriety has been neglected.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's not like I drink a lot, but I think I just kind of realized, what's the point? I see it when you go out and we go out with friends. Like, I do like that, and that's not something I want to give up. Like, I think going out on the town or having like a nice dinner party like we were talking about with some of Christina's friends.
Right,
I think those are events that are really good, and I enjoy them, and I like to drink, and I want to drink at those events. But then, we've had weekend nights too where we just sit back and, have a glass of wine, and I'm not the type of guy that can have one glass of wine.
You might have got that from me.
Yeah, if I'm drinking, it's like, what's the point unless I get a good buzz going? And then I just kind of realized, what's the point of doing that on a weekend night if you're just hanging out at the house and getting super drunk, and then you feel like shit the next day and feel a little bit off. And I always feel like it leaks a little bit into the week as well, where I just don't think as clearly, or I'm not as quick, I guess, or witty.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's something that it's been frustrating, and it's not like it really affects me a ton, but something that I want to consider and, not actively propose here that I'm not going to drink at all or not going to drink unless it's socially. I'm sure I will, but I'm conscientious of it.
Interesting. Well, it's kind of going around the whole dry January thing.
Yeah, it's like
I know you don't like that. It's like New Year's, exactly. But it's also, people being sober curious, or they call it mindful drinking, is really like a big deal. It used to just be, and especially like in my generation, that was just what you did. There were no questions asked, really. But, later generations seem to be a little bit less interested, and some, maybe are more into weed or something along those lines. But, alcohol just isn't the end all and be all for people anymore. And I think it's really interesting because just what you're getting at is kind of what's now referred to as this gray area drinking. And a lot of people, have you heard that term?
No, I haven't, but I think that it
makes sense. Yeah. The kind of the black or white. And so a lot of people have decided to stop drinking simply because it's just not doing good things for them. But they're not, they didn't have like some rock bottom, major crisis where they, quote, had to quit. But they started just looking at their life and saying, is it doing me any good? And is it hurting me? And would I be better either with less or with none at all. So actually, you're quite on trend, apparently.
I'm glad that I'm hip still these days. I think, and I had this realization with weed as well, is oftentimes when it's drinking or smoking, especially on the weekend, it's to fill time. It makes being bored a little bit more enjoyable. You don't have to go out. You don't have to spend money. You can just hang out at home, and hang out at home is a little bit funner if you're, under using substances, under the influence of something. And I think coming to that realization makes it a little bit easier as well to quit. Like when you're talking about hitting rock bottom, I think even when that happens, a lot of people aren't immediately like, wow, I just don't want to drink at all.
I'm no, not they really want to. They just know that
realize they can't.
The shit's going to hit the fan.
Exactly.
And their life is just a mess.
And I think this realization makes it a little bit easier where that desire starts fading away. And you don't feel obligated to not drink. Like like I said, I'm not going to say I'm done drinking, or I'm not going to drink unless it's in this situation. I'm sure I will. But being conscientious of it is the first step. It's the first step.
Well, it's really interesting because, when I stopped drinking, I didn't do it the AA way or anything like that. It was there's a book called This Naked Mind by Annie Grace. And there's one that actually you would probably like more, and Peter liked this one more. It's called Alcohol Explained by William Porter. But it talks about just exactly what alcohol does and doesn't do, and how, we've romanticized it and we think that it relieves stress. Does it relieve stress? Actually, no, it causes physical stress in your body. Does it make you funnier? Actually, no. It makes you, well, maybe for like that first 20 minutes, but then, you're slower. And you're very quick-witted. So even with alcohol, you're still freaking hilarious. But I mean, think how much more hilarious you would be. It takes you down a couple of levels. And those books, the more scientific ones, and the fact that it's a habit and it's something that's so socially, condoned and encouraged. And when you really start looking at those things, you can actually just lose the desire to do it. It's like, well, I thought that I really wanted to do it, but now I realize that I'm going to be more stressed. I'm not going to be less stressed. You might want to check that out. And since you drive all the time, it's a good one on Audible too. I've
been listening to, obviously, podcasts quite a bit, trying to sharpen my skills as a podcaster, as well as some Audible books. But on that point as well, I noticed too, when I go out, I think a lot of people, as well as myself, you think you have to have a drink, or I'll have a drink and it'll loosen me up a little bit. And I think that is true to a certain extent, but I also feel myself getting into this cycle where I say to myself, like, one more drink and I'll be right where I need to be. Like the next drink, and that's going to be when I'm like fully loosened up and I'll be good. But you never really get to that point. And if you do, then it's usually messy and not good. You don't want to be at that point if you're in a social situation. And that was something I kind of realized a while ago. And it helped with not drinking too much when I go out or getting messy or anything like that, because I think that's the worst thing that you can really do is when you go out to have fun, you're with friends and you're trying to have as much fun as possible, but then you end up drinking and making a fool of yourself and being the story of the night.
The story of the night is never good. So you mentioned also working out as a part of this epiphany. Contemplating getting back in the gym.
I've gone through phases where it's been massive focus of mine, and I have very bad black and white thinking where I think if I can't do something to my absolute max, to the best of the best, fully apply myself, then there's no point in doing it.
You might have got that from me too. I've been working on that though.
And it's you got to find that gray area, not gray drinking, but you got to find that gray area of applying yourself and recognizing that there is a benefit, even if you're not getting the maximum amount of benefit out of it. There still is a benefit.
All right, and it builds up over time and a little bit at a time, and
Well, and recently too, I've been obviously working in Web3 and staying at home and working from my house. I spend 12, 13, 14 hours a day on the computer in my room, which I don't have a problem with. I enjoy it. It's nice. But I also recognize there is probably some mental benefit to going out in the world.
Maybe a little bit.
Getting some sunlight on the skin, some vitamin D.
Eyes. You're supposed to get sunlight in your eyes.
Yeah, heart rate up. So
social interaction.
Yeah. And it doesn't feel as if it's necessary right now. It's more me recognizing that down the line, long term, it would be healthy to start integrating these life practices so I don't get to a point where I feel like I need to.
Well, and they say that sitting is the new smoking. I mean, getting up and walking around and getting movement is, a huge health benefit.
Yeah.
And getting out to the gym. Like, I mean, I know that you used to absolutely get energized by it and really love it and be very excited when you saw gains and that sort of thing. So,
Yeah.
so I would encourage that.
Well, I guess that was just more of a personal antidote that I had come to that realization or had been mulling over this last week and wanted to share it with people.
Wow,
maybe.
big stuff. Definitely. Thank you. Thank you
I'll
for
keep you guys updated. I mean, maybe I come back next week and I say, fuck it, I got sloshed this weekend and it was an absolute mess and a great time. Who knows? Who knows?
Well, we'll anxiously await your reports.
I'll be a little bit more obligated to do it now that I've said it publicly. Going on, though, let's start with updates on cases.
Absolutely. Well, the first big update is J&J antics. So Johnson & Johnson, as we've talked about multiple times, they've got all of these lawsuits going on, about 50,000 cases out there with regard to talc causing ovarian cancer. Mm-hmm. And then they also have cases involving mesothelioma. We also talked about how the states have sued them. Mm-hmm. And of course the Texas two-step. Which
and is the 50,000 just with the talc, or is that across all of the cases that they open? Because it is several.
Yeah, the 50,000 are just the talc cases,
okay, that makes
the
sense.
Individual plaintiffs. But right now they have agreed to a settlement with 42 states. So actually 42 states and Washington, D.C. So wow. 43 entities. There's a proposed settlement, hasn't been finalized, but looks like it will be for $700 million that's going towards the states. And the issue, one of them doing this is kind of part of a whole power play that they've got going on. They're trying to clear out certain types of cases, and what they're really planning to do is file a third bankruptcy. Wow. And one of the reasons they want to get rid of the states is that arguably the states could continue their litigation even if there's a bankruptcy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they're sort of just trying to kind of clear the boards. They've also been trying to settle some of the mesothelioma cases. There's a very small percentage of cases that involve the mesothelioma, this horrible lung type of cancer, again, caused by the talc. And so it looks like they're trying to clear those out, and they're trying to get rid of the states, and they have this master plan for their third attempt at bankruptcy. Mm-hmm. And what they're doing is their LTL management, this entity, this subsidiary that they formed to take all of their liability with regard to talc, they've actually filed with the Secretary of State in Texas. They want to relocate that part of the business from New Jersey to Texas. So now it's going to be a Texas entity, and now they're going to take advantage of the Texas state law and the Texas two-step and try to file a third bankruptcy. Mm. So, will it be successful? Who knows? Probably if it was going to be successful anywhere, it would be more likely to be in its namesake state.
Makes sense.
And then Texas is, not an ideal place for plaintiffs anyway, even aside from that. But still, the courts the New Jersey courts that have tossed it out previously have said, this isn't what bankruptcy is about. It's for a financial, a company that's in financial dire straits, and they are not. They're fine, and so they have not been allowed to pursue it. So I don't know if it's going to be successful or not. Nobody knows. But what we do know is it's going to delay things again. Mm-hmm. It's usually, a year and a half, maybe 2 years.
Jeez.
Right. And then all of the lawsuits get paused. It's called stayed. And these people, again, they're cancer victims and survivors, and people have been dying. Litigation's been going on for 10 years. Wow. And so, we're going to do this again for another 2 years.
Yeah, that's incredibly calculated. I'm curious because it sounds like you guys have this figured out for the most part on what they're going to do, what their next step is. Is this something that, how are you aware of their perspective and of their next steps? Is there something that's most obvious, for example, them taking the states off the board here so that they can go for this bankruptcy? I'm assuming they're not announcing this, right? They're not saying.
Well, actually, they do a lot of announcements to their shareholders, because one of the big issues that's driving them wanting to get rid of this and be done with it and file the bankruptcy for that section is stockholder concerns and their stock prices going down, and that is a huge effect on the business as a whole. So they've actually said they were going to file a third bankruptcy last year.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was public, and then the rest of it, they are trying to settle these cases, and we kind of look at it and we say, well, that kind of makes sense. I mean, it looks like a big master plan.
That makes sense.
So yeah.
And with them relocating to Texas, I mean, like you said, the last decision was that they shouldn't be filing for bankruptcy because it is intended for organizations that are under financial distress, and that still isn't the case.
Still not the case.
What's the point of going to Texas? Do they think they're just going to try to run it back and see if they have better luck? If they don't have better luck here, can they just keep moving to different states and trying with new laws?
Well, I mean, I guess in theory they could, but Texas is really their best bet. Yeah. But again, I mean, it's so clearly manipulative that they're actually trying to move this entity to Texas.
Yeah.
Now, is Texas just going to say, well, yeah, it's totally manipulative and you don't need the break, but we're Texas and we do what we want to do. Yeah. And so, okay, welcome to Texas. Yeah. Don't mess with Texas, or go big or go home, and, all of those sayings. We'd have to ask Fernie about all of those.
Yeah. So it seems like it's more of just a plan of pushing this out. At the end of the day, they just want to extend it, delay it for another year. Like you said, with the cancers, I mean, it puts all of these cases on hold. It's been going on for 10 years. It's in their benefit to really keep this paused for as long as possible. It seems like that's the main goal. And if by some miracle they're able to pull off this bankruptcy, that would just be the cherry.
Well, I mean, it's kind of a win-win to them. I mean, the ideal win would be if the Texas court says, okay, yes, and the bankruptcy goes through, because then they don't have to litigate any of these cases. Basically, the money is in this pot, and the bankruptcy court has to deal with distributing it, and they're kind of home free. So that would be, great. But if they don't get their number one choice, okay, second choice is they get it delayed for another 2 years. All of the plaintiffs, again, some of them are dying. People are frustrated. They want to get done. Would they be willing to settle?
Yeah.
In this pendency for less? There already when these first two bankruptcies were proposed, the second time there was a whole group of plaintiffs, attorneys, and plaintiffs who wanted it to go through.
Wow.
Just basically get it done.
Yeah.
So will more people now start kind of flocking over to that side and saying, we're just done. Let's just be done with this already?
It's shocking there's not fines or some type of action that the government's taking on this, because the fact that it's allowed for them to almost so blatantly push this along and almost manipulate the system, it seems, for the benefit of their own. I mean, how can this be allowed?
Well, I mean, they're you have your right to your day in court, and all of the appeals that everybody's entitled to that. But in theory, a judge could sanction them if they found that it was, a frivolous filing. I mean, it feels like that pretty much that's what they said in the Court of Appeals last time, that it was pretty frivolous. And now you're actually going to move to a different state trying to, okay, it's like, mommy said no, and I'm going to go to daddy. I mean, what the heck?
Well, and you said 700 million going to these states. It's spread out, I think you said 42?
42 in Washington, D.C., so
42
a total of 43 entities.
43 entities. 700 million for 43 entities, 42 of those being states, doesn't seem like a very large amount.
It's not. And again, that would go towards, what costs incurred by the state, and there's health care, treating these people, that sort of thing. But again, it's a compromise settlement. And settlements are always, it's good for both people. The defendant pays more than they want to. The plaintiffs take less than they want to. And you always know that you have the possibility of losing and getting zero.
Yeah.
And, and then also with the potential bankruptcy, maybe the states are like, hey, let's just, get this into our coffers. And
I would think the government would have a little bit more of a strong hand here, try to big dick them or something. I don't know. It feels like the government's almost getting bullied around here, getting pennies on the dollar, and then also having this skirt around the system going to Texas or relocating to Texas. But I mean, that's unfortunate. I feel like it's just right on the peg for J&J, though. Johnson.
Oh
They've
my
been doing
gosh.
this.
It's just, it makes me so angry. And it's just like, come on already. I mean, and it's very sad, because again, it's a horrible disease. And many of these people have passed away or are likely to. And, they didn't see justice in their lifetime. Their families are still pursuing the cases. But it's just really, it feels cruel.
And does this extend the statute of limitations? Because generally it's from the date that you should have been aware that your damages were incurred by a product or medication, whatever it is. It's been 10 years that they've been delaying this. It looks like it's going to be delayed for another year or two. I'm assuming people can continue to bring in new cases, and this is extending it. And hopefully, as people either fall out of the lawsuit or try to settle for less, more people are coming in because they're more aware and there's more time.
Well, so the statute of limitations would have to do with the time of when you were diagnosed. Mm-hmm. So since it's been out there in the public realm that the talc can cause these cancers for 10 years. If you had cancer 10 years ago, your statute would have run in any state. But say that you got diagnosed a year ago, or you get diagnosed this week or next week, because again, the exposure, it can be years and years until you receive your diagnosis. So your statute of limitation, the individual one, wouldn't start to run until you got your diagnosis. Mm-hmm. And connect. Well, at this point, like I said, it's pretty much in the public realm that could be the cause. So
that's unfortunate. Well, I guess that's the one light at the end of the tunnel. I'm really trying to see how this can be beneficial at all. And, hopefully it gets more eyes on the case and more people aware of the situation. So if there is anyone that has complications with talc,
this also coincides with, we talked a couple of sessions back about how because the second bankruptcy was dismissed, all of the plaintiffs' lawyers were gearing up to start trying these 50,000 cases. And so, that again probably put some pressure on them. Mm-hmm. There was one boot camp back in November. There was going to be a second one in February. And if they file, then presumably again, it stops all of that. It stops all of the workup and the prep and all of the teams that were being formed to be running all over the country trying these cases.
Yeah, add more costs onto the law firms and the plaintiffs as well. That's just grimy stuff.
It's really grimy stuff.
What other updates you got for us?
Okay, update on the killer lemonade. Ooh, Panera.
Yeah, it's a good name for it, honestly, at this point.
The killer lemonade. I know she'd have
killer.
a good like little lemon running around with a knife or something.
They should change that to the new mascot of Energized Lemonade.
Yeah, so we've talked about there have been 2 lawsuits filed over deaths as a result of the charged lemonade. And just kind of to recap this lemonade, it's actually served in the Unlimited Sips Club, and it has been self-serve, and a large one contains 390 milligrams of caffeine. Healthy adults should be limited to about 400 milligrams a day, but again, when it's all you can drink, people are drinking more than one serving. So there were 2 deaths and lawsuits that are pending, and now there's been a 3rd lawsuit. This one's a little bit different. This one involves a woman who was, I think, a 28-year-old woman, and she was a very healthy person. She was an athlete, and she went in and she had 2.5 charged lemonade drinks.
Jesus.
Yeah, so this was in Rhode Island. She had 2.5 of these charged lemonade drinks. Again, totally healthy. And the other 2 people both had some pre-existing condition, as we've talked about. This woman did not, according to the lawsuit. This happened back in April of 2023. And then she started experiencing palpitations. They got so bad that the next day she went to the emergency room, and she was diagnosed with atrial fibrillation.
What's that?
So atrial fibrillation actually is kind of Peter's specialty.
Yeah, well, anything heart related, I know we got a professional.
Well, not anything. So he's electrophysiologist. So he deals with irregular heart rhythms.
Yeah.
So we always say he's the electrician, not the plumber. So he's not with the blockages, but he's with the electrical system of the heart. Yeah, exactly. Well, wouldn't you rather have an electrician than a plumber? Or
yeah, plumber sounds a little dirty. But
yeah,
no offense to any plumbers listening.
Poop and stuff. Yeah, like that exploding toilet. Anyway, so atrial fibrillation is a condition where you have episodes bouts of rapid heartbeat, and it can increase your risk for stroke. So if you have this condition, in fact, your dad had the condition and had an ablation.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, that's exactly what he had. And so sometimes they can treat it with medication. Otherwise, they might have to do the ablation.
Yeah.
Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't.
Which is insane. You go through like an artery in the groin and it goes all the way up to the heart. Like, I didn't even realize that.
Well, yeah, and you ablate or you like burn little sections of the heart where the signals are sent. So you kind of, and Peter could give you the actual details on that. But what she said is she did not have this condition before. After having 2.5 of these killer lemonades, she had the condition and now it's permanent. Now she has listed quite a few symptoms along with it. Shortness of breath, supraventricular tachycardia, really fast heartbeat.
Yeah, okay, that's like almost trying to flex on people over here to say he's got a fast heartbeat.
Okay, well, there's different kinds of fast heartbeat. This is SVT, which is supraventricular tachycardia, and I actually know about it because I had this years ago, and in fact, I almost met Peter.
Oh, yeah. I remember
many years back, because they were going to send me to him, and then it turned out that I had just been overdosed on thyroid meds, and that's why my heart was racing. So it wasn't a permanent condition. Anyway, that was an aside. So she's having this SVT, rapid heartbeat, shortness of breath, palpitations. She says brain fog, difficulty thinking and concentrating, body shakes, and weakness. So and additionally, she and her husband were considering starting a family, and now she's reconsidering that because she would be a high-risk pregnancy due to this condition.
Okay.
So I did discuss this over dinner last night with Peter because I was like...
Seems like quite a bit.
Well, I said a couple of things. I said, first of all, AFib... I didn't know that had anything to do with brain fog, and
that was going to be one of my questions. Is how long are these symptoms going on? I mean, brain fog. I mean, like what? Permanent brain fog? Like develop OCD from this now, or it's
So he said that was not normally a symptom of AFib, and most people don't even know they have it.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you'll notice palpitations or rapid heartbeat, but he said most people don't know that. And the other thing is, she's saying that this is a permanent condition and she didn't have it before. And just again, what I knew, I was like, well, that sounds a little bit strange. If it's really from a lot of caffeine, would that be something that would be permanent? And he said, generally not. Again, he hasn't seen her medical records, but more often than not, I mean, and he sees a lot of times those people who use illegal drugs like cocaine or something like that. I mean, you could die from that, of course, with just one use. But, you will have that condition, but it wouldn't be necessarily permanent from one exposure.
It would be like strained use over a long period of time that strains the heart, at least, because of the continuous use. Yeah, that's interesting. Also, I mean, you mentioned that she was healthy. She was an athlete. She was running, whatever it is. I'm sure there's a lot of, you raise your heartbeat quite a bit. Caffeine, yes, I can see, especially if you have predisposed conditions that make you a little bit more...
well, like the first one, the young woman who was 21, she had the long QT syndrome.
Yeah.
So she already had an irregular heart rate.
But someone that's super healthy, I mean, I've taken way too much caffeine before.
I know you used to just live on Red Bulls and
all of my
Monsters
friends have though. I've had friends that double scoop pre-workout and then drink a Monster while they're working out at the same time. To think that an athlete, someone that does have a healthy heart, went in and was sitting down and just slammed 2 lemonades and all of a sudden had this serious heart condition that is now permanent, and now she can't have a family because of it. Seems a little... Yeah,
I mean, and again, this is a lawsuit that's been filed. We don't know what will happen. Yeah. I'm sure that she has a doctor who is willing to testify or planning to testify that he believes that this permanent condition is related to the one-time exposure. I suspect that the defense will be hiring a cardiologist.
Their own doctor that will say the exact opposite.
Will probably say the opposite. I don't know how that will all go forward. I mean, it definitely raised some eyebrows for me just because, I know a lot about AFib, since that's, again, probably the number one thing that Peter does. He does do other things, of course, as well, but that's so many people have AFib. And the thing is that people don't have any idea they have it. So she could have had it and never known, but then she has this horrendous incident. And then they're actually saying, well, because of course you are probably for the next day too going to be racy.
Yeah.
And then they start doing a workup and they find it. Was it caused by that? And if it was caused by that, is it permanent?
Also, just the extent of lists of conditions or side effects that she's having that she's trying to add on top of this, like the brain fog.
Well, the brain fog threw me, and I said to Peter, I said, well, "What's that have anything to do with AFib?" And I mean, he was trying to be diplomatic, but
yeah, I was trying to be Switzerland. Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I think we're both on the same page, and we've talked about this before. Well, I forgot which episode it was that we discussed this. And
probably a couple, because there are 2 cases. And one other thing, though, subsequent to these lawsuits, and they now have taken it off of the self-serve station.
Thank God.
So, well, but again, we kind of talked about this, I think, the last time, like, oh, right, already, it's freaking lemonade. If people are dying.
How much money are they making from this for them to be risking this?
This is absolutely ridiculous. And I doubt people are choosing Panera over other restaurants because of this charged lemonade.
I mean, also, I can understand. I am definitely going to pick something that has more caffeine in general because I'm just a tired guy. I'm a lazy guy. But just change the recipe. Change the formula.
Oh, yeah,
it's not
drop
like
it a little bit.
It's not like
you could drop it in half, and it's still quite a bit.
Well, yeah, exactly. And then also, it's not like it changes the taste. You don't taste caffeine in your drinks. Yeah. You could change it, and no one would notice at all.
Yeah. Well, so now that you have to actually go to the counter and order it, and then I think they also have like warning on the menu.
Nice. I get a high school student that gets to figure out whether or not I'm gonna be okay having 2 lemonades. What my heart conditions are. You're gonna have a minimum wage guy asking, "Hey, do you have any predisposed heart conditions?"
Maybe a little EKG station set up.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you might not know you have the condition.
I mean, maybe I'm sure it will help. Like it is a good step in the right direction, but also at the end of the day. The people that are working there, some might put in that extra effort. I would argue a majority of them won't. Majority of them don't care. They see a customer come up, there's a long line, they say, "Hey, can I get the lemonade?" Not a second thought, immediately go refill it and give it back to them.
Yeah. So we'll see if these lawsuits continue to happen. I mean, it's strange because I don't recall seeing other lawsuits. I mean, not even like, with the energy drinks. I mean, I know that I think there were maybe some back in the day, in the early days when they started with those. And I think people do know that if you have too much of them, it can be dangerous. I remember warning you about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just like one of those things. We got so many comments like this on the Kratom post as well, where it's like, "Oh, you drink 5 gallons of water in one sitting, you're gonna die. Should we ban water?" And obviously that's like pretty extreme and absurd, especially in the relation to what we were talking about with Kratom. But to that same point, I mean, caffeine is one of those things that that it raises your heart rate.
That's why you're taking it, probably.
Yeah, exactly. That's why you're taking it. There does have to be a certain level of self-responsibility when, you get a Red Bull. Okay, I shouldn't be slamming 6 back to back. That shouldn't be, I shouldn't be waking up and immediately having 3 Monsters. I shouldn't be having 3 energized lemonades. In this situation, it is different because with the lemonades.
It's lemonade. It sounds very innocuous. And that the way that they advertised it was that it was like a coffee.
Yeah.
So
I guess I more was talking about like the Monster and Red Bull and like caffeine in general. You should be conscious. I guess with the lemonade, it is different, like we said in the past, because it's almost as much, if not more caffeine than some pre-workouts, which in a lemonade is just absolutely insane.
Well, and with an unlimited sip club and an all you can drink, it's almost encouraging you to drink more than 1 serving because otherwise why get
they're losing out on value.
It's ridiculous.
You're throwing money away. if you're not refilling before you leave the restaurant, you are just burning money.
Exactly.
Hopefully we don't see any more cases come of this. I'm surprised that there's already been 3. This was one that I thought was going to be a one-off.
Me too.
And I also thought they were going to be a little bit more active in preventing this from happening. Seems like, again, every case they get a little bit closer to being safer with, I guess, the distribution of it. But hopefully we don't hear about it again.
Yeah, but if there is one, we will talk about it.
We will talk about it. Keep an eye out if you go to Panera, by the way. You definitely don't want to be risking anything. What other updates?
Okay, so do you remember when we talked about the sodium nitrite suicide cases with Amazon?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, so people were ordering the sodium nitrite, and there had been quite a few posts on social media sites talking about how it was a quick and painless way to commit suicide. And teens were ordering it off of Amazon, and Amazon was aware that these websites the websites that were promoting suicide were actually driving sales to Amazon's Prime or Amazon's online store.
Well, and then I know that too with the mother that had a kid that killed himself, and she reached out directly to Amazon support, letting them know about it. I think it was like 3 different occasions, and they just didn't do anything about it. And then the most insane part of this entire story was on the recommended list of people also bought this was like other items that people use to kill themselves with. And it was just the most ridiculous, and then completely unrelated too. Like the things that just normal person wouldn't get both together.
Yeah. Well, so the big issue that we talked about the last time was, is this the kind of lawsuit that can go forward? Is this a viable claim? Because the product isn't defective. The product does what it's supposed to do, cures meats, and people are intentionally misusing it. So can you blame the seller for that? And there were a number of claims in the lawsuit, and most of them got tossed, particularly with regard to, this was in Washington State, the Consumer Protection Act, which would require adequate warning. And it made sense that they would dismiss that one because the judge said, look, better warnings aren't going to avoid this because the people who are buying it intend to misuse it to kill themselves. So if you say, hey, this could kill you, that's not going to work.
And this lawsuit was against Amazon, not the manufacturer, correct?
Right, Amazon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just clarifying.
Yeah. And so that claim and a number of others were dismissed, but 2 survived, and the claims are a claim called outrage, which I figure you'll love that.
Yeah. I didn't realize there's a name for it.
There is such a claim of outrage, and that's just something that's so completely horrifying and outrageous.
That's good that there is something like a area section just for that. It's like we don't know if we covered all the bases here. Let's just throw in this blank check. If it's just absolutely absurd, we can throw it under here.
Just right under outrage. That one, and then also the negligence claim. And so the negligence claim goes to what we were talking about, that they knew and they failed to do something to prevent it. And again, they just survived a motion to dismiss, so we don't know that the case, we don't know if the case will ultimately be successful, but it did get over a pretty big hurdle, and I thought it was pretty interesting, so I just wanted to kind of give you an update on that one.
Yeah, I think it makes sense with a case like this where it is kind of undefined territory. Is there responsibility? Did they do anything wrong? And I think from an outside perspective, especially with a mother that constantly warned them and let them know, it's pretty easy for us to say, yes, there was something wrong here. They should have done more. But it's completely different when you go into the courtroom and when you have to cite and reference specific laws or cases and what they actually did wrong.
Right.
And so in a situation like this, it sounds like the plaintiffs kind of threw a lot at the wall.
Definitely.
Seeing what would stick. And luckily, one or two of them did. Mm-hmm. And I learned something new every day. The outrage was one that did stick.
Yeah. Well, you don't see that very often because it has to be really, really extreme.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's usually, if people do include outrage, that's usually the one that gets tossed because it's like, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
That's like really above and beyond.
Has there been any other cases that you can think of that have had that included outrage, or did outrage, like that section of it, come from there being a case where, maybe a defendant got away with something and everyone kind of came back to the table and was like, okay, this is so fucking insane. We have to add something in the book for this.
I actually did used to toss that in on occasion. Okay, but not just your standard case, but especially like back in the day with DUI cases or dram shop cases where people were horrendously overserved. In fact, in general, it was dismissed, but in fact, I think I talked to you about the one where they got the woman really, really drunk and then they kicked her out and she walked into the street and got killed, know? And I thought that would constituted outrage. I mean, we ended up settling the case. We didn't get to trial. So I don't know how that would have panned out. But yeah, it has to be something extreme like that. I can't think of any that have been like in the news, but this it has potential here.
It's always interesting when I hear about laws that are so subjective like that.
What's outrageous to you might not be outrageous to me.
Exactly. And depending on the judge that you get, that determines whether or not it's going to stick.
Oh, totally. I mean, and certainly the judges could have gone the other way on this easily. Yeah. So.
So I'm assuming we'll probably hear more about this down the line. Amazon is a massive company. They have an army of lawyers, I would assume, and an endless bank account to really back this. I don't know how big the plaintiff size is here, but I'm assuming that they're going to be putting quite a bit of manpower into this now that these two have stuck.
Yeah, and I think, it's a big deal to Amazon also because they have so many products. And I mean, I guess the question would be, what is their responsibility to products that can be misused for harm, particularly for minors? So
it
it's
could
an
open the door for a lot.
It could open the door for a lot. Yeah, so it's a pretty big deal to them. So
yeah, I'm assuming they'll probably actually, now that I'm thinking about it more, opening the door with just how many products that are out there, how many products can be misused. I'm sure there's probably other products that people haven't even realized are kind of in the same category of being bought for the wrong reasons, or they're recommending just clearly, blatantly, bad things together that shouldn't be together. Exactly. If this actually goes all the way through, I could imagine it being a pretty big deal on the back end for them, reorganizing how things are recommended as well as the products that they do offer.
Yeah. Really interesting to see.
Any last updates?
Okay, one more update. The 3M settlement, which we've talked about a fair amount, and no, we cannot take more cases. That's the first thing. But the payments are actually starting. Wow. And by the 31st of January, they're going to pay a little bit over 30,000 of the claimants. So this is actually moving very quickly.
Yeah.
And in fact, some of our clients are going to be getting paid. So that is...
Nice.
That is a good thing.
That is really fast. How, comparatively, to put it in reference, how much faster is this than other cases? Is it?
Well, so this first payment, it's actually going to the ones that were in the process of getting worked up for trial. I mean, it's a lot of them. I mean, it's 30,000.
Yeah.
But this was the biggest multi-district litigation ever in U.S. history. Over 300,000 claims.
Jesus.
So that's a lot. So this is a tiny percentage of them.
Yeah, and many of these people are veterans because the 3M earplugs.
Yeah, they're all they're military earplugs, so they're all veterans.
Yeah. Well, that's good that it's moving faster, and it makes sense that this is such a massive case. I mean, obviously, veterans are very valued in the community and in society, and Skylar, one of my good friends from high school, he's a veteran. Actually on disability pay as well because he got injured in the Army.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, he's not I don't know. I don't want to expose him, but he's not in a wheelchair or anything. Okay. But he did get surgery. But it's good that there is kind of extra attention being brought here and that they are receiving their settlement sooner rather than later.
Yeah, so that's in process. But in case anybody was wondering if you did have a claim already filed, reach out to your attorney. If you were in that first wave of cases, then you would be getting your money. Actually, you probably already know right now. Hopefully, your attorney would have told you. But you should be getting paid very soon, and then hopefully they will continue to move from there.
And if you haven't claimed yet, then it's too late.
Too late.
Unfortunately.
For sure.
Anything else on cases that we're handling?
So on cases that we're handling, a quick update on Zantac. We talked about that in a little bit more detail last week. And what's happened on these, so a lot of the cases that were in Florida, the original MDL got dismissed back at the end of 2022, and that was based on the expert witnesses. And this is the same thing that happened with the bear hugger cases where the judge kicked out the witnesses, so then the cases got dismissed and they had to get appealed. So there are cases that are scheduled to go to trial in February. And there's a good chance that they're going to try to settle those out. There were the trials before that. There were 4 breast cancer trials that were scheduled to go to trial in October of 2023. And GSK, the manufacturer, got those settled right away. So what it looks like they're trying to do is if the cases are getting ready to get to trial, then they're going to settle those. And then hopefully the cases in Florida will be revived and back. But these are cases that are still viable. People are still filing lawsuits, and we're definitely still accepting cases. In fact, I think we signed a couple of those last week.
Yeah, It makes sense that they are waiting until it gets closer to settlement. It sounds like they're biding their time and trying to avoid a situation where it goes to trial. Sorry, I think I said settlement. But before, trying to avoid a situation where it goes to trial and they get hit with a massive settlement, because then that really opens up the floodgates for all these other cases. And I'm assuming gives them a little bit more grounds to ask for higher amounts.
Right. And so, and it's also a sign that those are pretty good cases if they're settling them, because if it's a really crappy case, they're going to want it to go to trial, because then there's a good chance that the plaintiff loses, that they win, or that that they lose, but that there's a relatively small verdict. But if it's a good case, then they're like, well, we got to get rid of these individual cases. We don't want some huge verdict. And like you said, it ups the value of all of the other cases.
And I'm assuming it's probably pretty calculated on the defense side as well, with the ones that they're really pushing for that are getting closer to trial, because the ones that maybe are decent cases, not super great, not bad, they still don't want to necessarily have that front and center for everyone to, risk going to trial and having that be a low settlement, or them just not winning at all.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, those are cases that we are still taking in Zantac. I mean, maybe I'll get a case for that. My stomach's been hurting quite a bit, and I did use it for a few months, so I have to get that checked out.
All right. Well, I hope your stomach's okay.
My favorite part of the show, interesting cases in the news. It's been a few weeks since we've been able to really go at these. The last week was the zombie deer situation, which was a little misleading, a little disappointing, I gotta be honest.
Oh, it wasn't nearly as exciting as you.
It still was exciting. That's not exactly what I was looking for.
Well, so this one, I'm all just up in arms over this one, and I don't usually...
Yeah, I can tell.
Boiling.
Boiling.
Well, it personally affects me, but oh gosh, I'm anxious to see what you think. So, a lawsuit has been filed against Dunkin Donuts for disability discrimination.
First the toilets, and now
Dunkin Donuts has been hurting.
Yeah, Jesus.
So disability discrimination, and this is because Dunkin Donuts charges an upcharge for non-dairy milks. Okay. And I happen to experience this all the time. Starbucks does the same thing. Probably most of them do, because I always get oat milk, and it's like an extra 70 cents or something at Starbucks, but I have never once complained.
So this is what's the ground for it being disability discrimination?
Right. Lactose intolerant.
Okay. Wow. That's a disability. Well, I mean, I guess technically it is. I don't see people with handicap passes for...
See, this is my thing. All right. I mean, disability is... Okay, let's just actually look at the definition of disability. A physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. Okay, major life activities are like...
I thought you were going to get me here with like it being very much in this area of description, but I do think there's a lot of leeway here. Major life areas, or what was it? Major life
activities. I mean, it's like walking, talking, working. I mean, having a lactose intolerance does not make you unable to do these things. You just don't drink milk. I mean, you get your coffee without milk.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, they're arguing that it is a disability, but I mean, I don't see. What level does it have to get to? I mean, it bothers my stomach a little bit. I went on a 90-day deal to take dairy and gluten out to see if it made a difference, and I farted less. That was basically it.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I'm lactose intolerant. It did bother my stomach a little bit, not enough to make me stop having lattes before.
Yeah.
But then I was like, oh, I'm having oat milk lattes. My stomach feels better. I'm going to keep doing that. But even when I was having the regular milk lattes, I mean, I could carry on a job. I could drive my car. I didn't need handicap parking.
Well, who knows? I mean, major life activities, you'd mentioned walking and driving and all that. I mean, if someone is just oblivious to lactose intolerant, or they just don't care and they're drinking all the lactose in the world, what if they start walking and they just, boom, shit their pants? Or
that's what could have happened in that airplane.
Exactly.
I had to turn around.
Exactly. And I bet you she went to Dunkin Donuts. She would try to get lactose-free coffee. And
but it was more, so she said no.
She said, no, I think I can make it. And look what happened. She shit her pants all over the airplane.
And the entire plane had to turn around.
A full
biohazard
stream of poo going down the airplane. So let me get this right. You're on the side that this is an absurd lawsuit.
Well, I don't know if I'm quite good at absurd or outrage, but
outrage. Yeah.
But kind of BSy. I mean, like, seriously, first of all, do you have like a God-given right to a latte
Yeah.
to start with? I mean, maybe you can't have lattes.
God-given right.
Well, or is it in the Constitution?
It was the top 10 testament. It was number 3.
Life, liberty, and lattes.
Exactly.
I mean, is that what it comes down to? Yes. Well, happiness can be dependent. But I mean, I guess what I start wondering is like, where is this going to go? Because people have gluten intolerances. People have nut allergies. I mean, if you have a nut allergy, then you don't eat foods that have nuts. Okay.
No. You're shit out of luck. Sorry.
I mean, does this restaurant have to offer pecan pie with fake nuts at the same price? I mean, I don't know.
See, that's the price thing is what I think is products like this cost more. If that's just the way of the world, like businesses shouldn't necessarily. I don't think businesses should have to incur that charge, because even if they're charging where they're making no profit for substituting almond milk or lactose-free, fat-free milk, whatever it may be, even if they're making no profit, they still have to charge more. And are they in the wrong because they're not taking that bullet? They're not taking that loss?
Well, so then that's the argument that if it truly is a disability, then they have to make reasonable accommodations for people with that disability. But is it a reasonable accommodation? I mean, and if it costs them more, can you pass it on? I mean, can I just go to a restaurant and say, hamburger doesn't sit well with me, but filet mignon, man, I digest that.
Yeah.
So you can't charge me more for that.
Yeah.
I mean,
there's an argument there. I think an interesting decision, too, to go with Dunkin Donuts, because like you said, Starbucks and just about everywhere else also charges extra. But Dunkin Donuts, I would assume, probably doesn't have as deep pockets as Starbucks. If they think they're going to get away with some slick lawsuit here, Dunkin Donuts, maybe Baskin Robbins would probably be my first pick, because they'd be, bottom of the wanting to deal with the charges of lawyers.
Well, they can't even fix their toilets. I mean,
exactly. Well, maybe if they charged a little bit more for coffee, then they would have enough money to fix their toilets. It's just a full flywheel effect here.
But maybe the toilet wouldn't be damaged if people hadn't had the less expensive lactose full milk, then they broke the toilet.
I think you figured out the cause here.
It's all coming together. It's all coming together. But it just also feels like a little first world too, because, we're complaining about our $6 lattes. Well, is it going to be $6.50 or is it going to be $6? I mean,
just don't buy a fucking latte.
Wow,
there's
just like a point.
If the 50 cents is that big of a deal for you, you should not be buying a latte.
That's what I'm saying. Is, I mean, you're buying a $6 coffee, for God's sake.
Make it at home. Fuck.
buy your own oat milk or soy milk or.
I also think it just gives lawyers a bad rap. Like, it just feeds into this narrative of being able to or wanting to sue everything, ambulance chaser, like that. There being no grounds, and I mean, obviously, I'm not a fan of that, right? I work for a law firm. You own a law firm, so anything that kind of looks bad on the overall field or industries.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just, it's I wouldn't have taken this case.
I'm surprised someone did.
Yeah. Well, one of the other arguments I thought was kind of funny was that they said they offer decaf or no sugar at no additional cost. So people who have diabetes, weight control issues, or hypertension are not discriminated against.
Isn't there lactose in donuts too? Like a majority of donuts?
Well, there's probably some milk.
Milk and like the frosting. I bet you the same person that doesn't want to pay extra because they're lactose intolerant is probably eating a lactose donut. Probably with some milk in the frosting. Well, this doesn't hurt me, but this 50 cents, this extra lactose in my coffee, this is fucking me up, ruining my day.
I don't know. It's just it definitely. I was like, wait a minute, and because I get lattes regularly, and I do get them with the oat milk, and it does cost more, but I just figure, I feel a little bit better with it. Mm-hmm. So it may be what will happen. Maybe this will be some big issue, and they'll just want to do the right thing and stop charging. I did have actually. It was interesting timing because I went to a little meetup with some friends at it was called the Hello Cafe here in Tucson. It's just a little teeny tiny independent cafe, and ordered a latte. And they actually have a sign that milk alternatives, no extra charge. It's the first time I've ever seen that, which just goes to the fact that everybody does this. And again, probably because it costs them more. Just like, when I was doing the gluten thing for 90 days, if you wanted a hamburger with a gluten-free bun, it was like an extra $1.
Yeah, well, also, you know what? Now that I've thought about it a bit, I wish they would charge more, because there's been a lot of times I've gone to Starbucks and they're out of oat milk. Supply, demand, you raise the price, less people get it, and then when I go, because it used to never be a problem. I used to be able to get oat milk every single time, and now it's at least 1 out of 3 times they're out of oat milk, and I have to go to fat-free milk. I'll pay $2. I don't care. Give me my goddamn oat milk, okay? It changes the taste. I like it more. It makes my morning.
Okay, well, on that note.
On that note, what other interesting cases are there?
Well, let's see. So, but this is a little update on the Alaska Airlines, and I'm sure there's going to be updates on this one time. They're just getting into the whole investigation, but it was, and I guess nothing about this is really funny, but I guess odd, I would say. During the investigation, they determined that someone in the Alaska Airlines chain of command decided that the plane, so these lights had come on saying that there was air pressure warning lights, and deciding whether or not they were going to fly. Somebody decided that the plane was unsafe to fly over the ocean, but safe to fly over land.
Okay.
Which makes absolutely no sense to me.
See, I would agree with you. However, with the most recent situation with the Boeing door flying
Well, this is it, yeah.
Oh, this is the same thing?
Yeah.
But why is it specific with Alaska Airlines?
Oh, because it was their plane.
Okay.
So it's Alaska Airplanes. Yeah. So it was a Boeing plane owned by Alaska Airlines, and Alaska Airlines is the one who made the call when they were getting this warning light, and they were like, "Oh, okay, it's all right."
So this is the same case where the door flew off.
Yes, the door flew off because
that
of
makes more sense.
Yeah, the
because
plug.
The conversation, even outside of when we talked about this last week, and whenever I see headlines, it's always Boeing, and I mean, Alaska's pretty lucky because I did not know Alaska Airlines was responsible, which is crazy because I've flown on Alaska Airlines as well. So that's actually crazy. There were warning signals that something was wrong in the
pressure issue. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and they thought it wasn't okay to fly over ocean, but okay over land, But were they planning on, was that plane scheduled to go over the ocean?
No. So that's why they let it go forward.
Oh, okay.
They let the flight go. And Boeing is on the hook too.
Yeah.
Right. But Alaska as well. So, and this is all fleshing out now. I mean, the investigation is ongoing, so we're going to hear things, but this was just like the most recent little tidbit. And it was just like, what in the heck? I mean, I don't want to go down in a plane on land or ocean. I don't know which one's worse, quite frankly.
That's it's funny you say that, because then it puts you in the perspective of like, if they're thinking about that, then they're thinking like, well, if it does go down, they're literally thinking, okay, it's going to go down. At least it won't go down over the ocean. That is worst case scenario.
Why though? I mean,
which is insane as well, because if for an emergency landing, ocean's better, water's better, right?
I don't really know which one's better, but they're both really, really bad.
Both, yeah. I would pass on both. If I was given the option, I'd say no, thank you. Black or white? No, gray. I'm sticking with the gray. No gray drinking, but gray for the.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure there's going to be more information coming out as this investigation goes on. But definitely Alaska Airlines CEO came out and did like a whole video apology and explanation and reassurance that all of these planes, were being grounded and being inspected and all of that. So, anyway, that's just a hot topic in the news.
I will not be going on Alaska Airlines. It seems like that is a deep-rooted problem there, even within the, what's it called, like the worker, okay, I don't know.
The chain of command there or whatever. But, but just the fact that, I mean, that just seems absolutely insane. I mean, be like, oh, it's just a little warning light, it's probably fine. I'd rather have that than, well, it's okay over land, but it's not okay over sea.
Was it a pilot or was it?
They didn't specify. It's just that someone in the chain of command who was making the
I would
call.
imagine the pilot had to have been made aware.
Right. The pilot would have been made aware and then, reported back to here's what's going on. Do we fly? Do we not fly? And the decision was you fly.
Yeah.
Just
fuck.
not over.
I was a pilot.
water.
I'd be like, what the fuck are you kidding? No shot. No shot. Well, I'm sure we'll be hearing more about that. I'm a loyal American Airlines boy, so
I know.
I'll be sticking with that. Alaska Airlines, enjoy it, you Alaskans. Hopefully you don't go down on the next one. Fingers crossed.
Whew.
Other interesting cases. We are kind of coming to a close here, so I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, well, actually, a couple of things. So, I did want to answer another question because we're kind of hitting on some of the frequently asked questions. And then the other thing we had talked last week briefly about the HIV drugs and the patent, and we were talking about like how long the patents lasted. And I'd said I said it was around 20 years, and I actually just double checked that. And actually, patents do last for 20 years for drugs. But the interesting thing about that is that that's when you patent it, but by the time you get it to market, half of that time might be gone.
That was like 12 to 14. That was the number I had in my head.
So probably So technically, the patent is good for 20 years, but it may only really
be on the
make
market.
Sense. For 12 to 14 years, maybe less.
Okay.
So anyway, just wanted to kind of clear that up. And then as far as questions, our question of the week, frequently asked question, and this one is asked quite a lot. And for some reason, people call us when other attorneys have made offers. Should I take the settlement offer or should I go to trial? And of course, the answer is it depends. But, but a lot of people hear about these huge verdicts in the news, and so the settlement offer is never going to be some multi-billion-dollar award. It's just not. And I think we touched on earlier, a settlement offer is a compromise, and it's more than the defendant wants to pay, and it's less than the plaintiff wants to take. So each side is going to be somewhat unhappy, but a good settlement basically makes both sides unhappy. It's not really extreme. And there's a lot that goes into it, and I think people don't realize that. They just think, they think about the upsides when they go to trial, like, well, why should I take $100,000? Well, maybe I could get $1 million.
Yeah.
And then that's where you really do need to talk to your lawyer about what are the risks that you get zero. And then what are the risks that you get less than what you're offered? It's a guarantee. You're not taking all of the risk. You're not going through the hassle of a trial. And then also, like we see with Johnson & Johnson, these cases get appealed.
Yeah.
And so even if you got a good verdict, what I've seen happen a lot of times is we get a good verdict, and then the defense says, I'll agree not to appeal if you take X, which is significantly less than the verdict. And again, the person has to make that decision. What's the value of time, right? Am I going to get this amount in 2 years, or is it going to turn around and I have to go back to trial and try again? Because and so a lot of that, again, it's very fact specific, and you want to talk to your attorney about the likelihood of the appeal being successful, what the grounds for the appeal would be, and have a good idea of what the kind of the going values are for these types of cases. Not the extreme ones that you see in the news, but the ones that are happening on a regular basis, and what kind of average verdicts are, because you're going to get some defense, you're going to get some high ones, and then what are those middle range ones? Yeah,
and I mean, it is just so dependent on every unique situation. It's hard to give an answer one way or the other for all of those reasons, and also like you touched on is the personal effect of it too. If it's something where you're diagnosed with cancer and you maybe have 5-10 years, or maybe even less, and you have this settlement, and maybe it's not exactly what you're looking for, but if it's going to be drawn out for another 3 to 5,
you're not going to survive
years,
and see justice or see your day in court, and maybe the value of that money now, you could really use it and
well, also pain and suffering dies with the defendant, right? Or the plaintiff, sorry.
Right. So, well, in some states, and in Arizona, it definitely does. And so then the value of the case is the loss to your family. It becomes a wrongful death claim.
Yeah.
And then it's the loss of, the love and affection.
And then your family has to go through that whole situation as well.
Right.
And I'm assuming if it does go to trial, testify about the loss and all that.
Exactly. So, I mean, it's a tough call, but we get so many calls about that. My lawyer said that I should take this, and I think it's low ball. And of course, some outside attorney doesn't know all of the details and the specifics of the case. But there are times where, and we've got a lot of these calls actually with the transvaginal mesh cases, and we settled a lot of those cases, and some of those were litigated. In fact, there's one that's just getting resolved now, has gone on for years. But we did have a pretty good feel for what type of injuries and what other settlements were, what that reasonable range was. So, and there were a few times there where I did see situations where I thought people were getting lowballed and let them know that.
I was going to ask how common it was, or if it was reasonable for people to ask for a second opinion, because I would imagine it is, because I almost compare it with going to the doctor, where you get a diagnosis or recommended on a medication, and sometimes it just doesn't feel right, or it doesn't sit right with you, and you want to go get a second opinion, and that's often recommended, right?
Yeah.
Like you go and see another specialist, or someone that maybe is a specialist in a different area that might have a better idea as well. And I think it makes sense with cases like this where, the clients or the patients, they don't know what's best. They haven't gone to school for all these years. They don't have years of experience in the field. So the best decision is to obviously trust the people that have, but you also want a second opinion, because a lot of different experienced attorneys are going to have different opinions. But at the same time, I mean, the second opinion, they're not going to be able to have nearly as much information as the first, compared to a doctor's office where they can actually look at records.
Yeah. Although, I have had situations too where I've had clients where I thought they were being unreasonable, and I've said, please go get a second opinion. Talk to as many other attorneys as you want. And if you find somebody who really thinks that you shouldn't take this offer, I'm happy to transfer the file to them if that's what you want to do. Yeah. Because sometimes people just, they don't know. And, and they see these things in the news and they're like, well, I'm never settling for less than $5 million. I'm like, well, they're never going to offer you that.
That lady, burnt herself with McDonald's coffee and she got $9 million. I can't even get $1 million. Come on here.
Exactly. Yeah. So, so definitely, I think it is reasonable to ask for a second opinion. And really, the other thing too is just to ask for some time and attention from your attorney. Like, can you sit down and just explain to me all of the reasons why? Rather than, because sometimes attorneys get really busy and they're like, this is a good offer, you should take it. Well, what about this? What about that? And sometimes as attorneys, we forget that people don't kind of know, they don't do this every day.
Yeah.
And they don't know all of the pluses and the minuses and the risks. And so it just, sometimes you just really need a good sit down with your attorney and have them put the time in to make sure that you understand, so that you're making, an informed decision, just like informed consent with doctors.
Yeah. And I'm assuming majority of them would be more than happy to do it. But like you said, after doing it for so much time, sometimes you just forget that a lot of these things that seem so obvious. I mean, even on this podcast, I'll ask questions and you'll be like, oh, well, I forgot that. Like, people don't know what this is.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So have those questions, ask those questions. If you have concerns, definitely voice them. And if you are looking for another opinion, you can always call us and give us, the lowdown on what's going on. But we may not be able to give you, the answer you're looking for, or an answer if we don't have, all the information, because I'm assuming your attorney probably has been working on this for a long time.
Right. Well, and then every once in a while, like in those situations, I've actually called the other attorney and kind of gotten some more information, and then I could kind of reassure the client as well. But again, if it's an area that we are not involved in, we generally do know who is involved in that area, and so we could make referrals for you.
Alrighty, awesome. Well, I think today's show was absolutely fantastic. We went over quite a variety of topics. If anyone has any questions or concerns, please feel free to throw them in the comment section wherever you're watching this, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. You throw it in the comment section and we'll see it. If it's something that you don't necessarily want to be out there in the public, completely understandable. You can send it to us in DMs, or even better, you can email us, podcast@showeredlaw.com. Questions, stories, whatever it may be, and we'll be happy to get back to you, either back over email, or we'll talk about it on the show and hopefully educate some other people on experiences that others have had. Appreciate all of you for hanging out with us and listening to our stories, our ramblings, our cases. Hope to see you next week. Have a good one. Prioritizing profits. Prioritizing
dangerous drug and product cases.